All right. Hey, I'm Shane Rice. I am meeting with the marketing operations team today. Just kind of have a short lunch and learn, talking about how the growth marketing team, which I am managing the inbound marketing team within the growth marketing team, how we interface with the growth team from product and how we work together. So, Derek, you have a question that you added to our agenda. Would you like to lead us off with that?
Let's get back to it and had to unmute simultaneously. So my biggest question, and maybe I'm jumping right into this and it may be getting too deep, but is we have a product growth team. So it's trying to understand how growth marketing, product growth work together and what that looks like. Are you working on the same things? Are you working on different things? What kind of collaboration is there? So
Yeah. So right now, our main interface there are a couple of interfaces. They have a weekly call with their product manager team, and so I join that call, and then some of their engineer. I guess that's actually their weekly call for their team. It's not just for product managers or engineers. And then they have an engineering call. Usually, I make the broader team call. I'm not always on the engineering call, and just hear what they're working on. So they're split up into, I want to say, five, maybe six different sections. So acquisition, um, conversion, telemetry, retention, so they're focused on kind of areas within the product. And so I'm on those calls just to see where any projects they work on may be impacting about.gitlab.com, our workflows, lead flows, those kind of things, to make sure that we know, um, when works in progress that might impact those things. And so we don't work on the same things. A lot of times what we do is we'll support each other. So if the growth team, they need something for marketing but they're not quite sure where, they may come to me and say, Shane, who do we need to talk to for this? So for example, we recently did some work with adding a Salesforce form or form field for trials. And so they came to me like, who should we talk to about this? So I said, well, you should start with marketing ops. And so we started there. So um, as far as where we work and who's working on what, right now we're focused mostly on the marketing website. So making sure that we're doing all the things we need to there from SEO perspective. That's my team specifically. Web analytics are tracked there. um, that we've got the right conversion target set up, those kind of things. And then product is focused, product growth is focused a lot on product processes. So the trial process, how do you sign up for a trial for GitLab.com specifically? How do you, they worked on the pricing page, made some changes there recently to improve that with some UX research. So, they have a lot of additional resources from that perspective on the research side of things, the design side of things. And so, a lot of the work they have done is focused on utilizing that within the product scope. So in the scope of those teams that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, so I guess the answer is both. Are we working on different things, or are we one leading the other? I think it's more, just kind of, we want to make sure everybody knows what's going on in both spheres, so that we're not overlapping work and that we're working on important things together.
I don't know how much the team is familiar with the idea of growth marketing. It's fairly new, right? I mean, it hasn't been out there that long, or has it?
I mean, the term's been kicking around for like 8 to 10 years probably. So it's relatively new, but I think it's mostly within the context of digital marketing software team specifically is kind of where it kind of bubbled up for the first time. So yeah, so growth marketing is really focused on you know growing organic reach. So whether that's search or referrals or brand, like that all kind of fits into what we do with growth marketing. So right now, our growth marketing team consists of the inbound marketing team, and then we have the brand and digital team, which includes design, um, digital team that's focused on building out pages on the website and processes for the website, making sure that the build times for about.gitlab.com on pipelines are running fast, those kind of things. And then we also have content. So those groups work together to try to increase the number of people that are finding GitLab through search, through other channels. And then, I mean, it's one of those things where like growth marketing is really defined by the needs of your organization and like how leadership defines that. So for us, that's kind of where we're focused is like we're focused on inbound, like making sure that, when somebody gets to the website, there's a clear next step for them, that, we're not just getting people to a page and then like they don't know what to do. Right. So that's why we focus on CTAs and conversion around those. Prime example for me, last month did actually, I guess early May, I did an audit where I looked at the CTAs across the website and compared that to our top pages with traffic to see like, okay, so what pages get a lot of traffic but don't have a lot of CTA clicks. And what I found was that install was like really lots of like 80,000 people hitting that page, right, in the last 30 days. But we had no real clear CTA at the top of that page. Like you could scroll down and you had install instructions for installing on Linux, Ubuntu, all these instructions on how to install a self-managed version of GitLab, but no call to action to get a free trial for that. And so I just added a free trial at the top of that. And then, I mean, immediately we started, the last 30 days, I think we've gotten 300 self-managed free trial requests just from adding that button. And so those are the kind of things that the growth marketing team's looking for, ways that we can map out what's working now and how can we improve that to increase lead flow, increase revenue.
Quick question on that, Shane. Do we have, or is there someone on your team that's just focused on conversion optimization? Or are you looking for someone?
No, we don't have anybody focused on that now. And I don't know that we'll have someone focus on that specifically as a task. I think we're still kind of in the early phases of determining how my team will interface with the product team from a growth perspective. So I think what we may end up doing eventually is mapping out to kind of their stages. So like have somebody that's focused on acquisition, someone that's focused on conversion, someone that's focused on retention. Like, I don't know that it will map one-to-one because some of those functions don't really have a clean tie back to marketing, to like generating, like new revenue. I think, like retention is great, but is that something that, we should focus on in marketing, or is that something where we need somebody in support that's helping with the retention side of things? I don't know. So I think, like the answer is like everybody on the team will be doing conversion testing. It'll just be different parts of the marketing flow.
And my understanding of growth is it's a little bit more, to me, it's a little bit just GitLab. You do a lot of A/B testing, try something out, MVC, see how it works and adapt. That doesn't necessarily seem unusual growth. That's really just how GitLab thinks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a natural fit for our philosophy, right? Like, let's see what small changes we can make to have big impact, right? That's kind of, that probably would have been a great thing to say when you asked me what growth marketing was. But I just thought of that. So yeah, no, that's right. It's natural to us. It's natural to how we work and how we think about things. And so, it hasn't really changed much of my day to day. I'm still doing a lot of the same things I was doing whenever, I was on the digital marketing team. So yeah, it's, very much like in the spirit of how GitLab functions. Can you hear my dog? He's running a circle with a leash on, and so it's like hitting the floor like a drum.
I thought it might have been his tail wagging and like hitting something.
No, his tail does go crazy, but that was not that sound.
Another question I have is just how can marketing ops better be, like, we have had separate meetings with, Sam and Jensen about specific things. I'm just trying to figure out, and Becky was on those calls. So maybe help us understand who we should be having join us when, and how can we best help the team?
That's a great question. So I tend to think of it as something where if there's going to be an impact to y'all, like, if it's going to impact like Marketo or Salesforce or any of the systems that I know you manage, then I'm going to, like reach out and include y'all. So I think like when should we be included? I think like if it's anything that touches, you know, search, like, it can have an impact on like how a page is structured, how a search engine would crawl that and discover a page. Like that's something we should be included on. Same thing if like it's impacting conversions, like we should be involved on that. And so I think another thing is like we don't really have like a really common language right now for conversions, right? From a marketing perspective, I think of a conversion as like a multi-step process. So like the first step of conversion is like clicking on a CTA, right? Like that's a conversion of a kind, right? And then the next step is filling out a form and hitting submit. And then the next step is accepting a trial and paying us. Like so, there's multiple steps of those the process there. So what's conversion to us? Because I think that's where some of the conversations break down, is we just throw conversion out there as an idea, but we don't follow up on what we mean by conversion. So and I mean I just did it, right? Like because to me, like conversion is that first step. Like how do I get people from this page they're on to the next page? And so anything that impacts that, I would want to know, like especially when it's impacting trial. I think that's kind of the main focus for me right now, because that's such a reliable source of pipeline. And I think other form types, like resources, webcast, et cetera, those are important, but I'm not as directly responsible for those, because the pages we look at, like blog posts and product pages and those things, should feed into resources, should feed into webcast, but they're not something that we manage directly. So I think that first level of conversion, like clicking through to a specific page, and then the trial pages themselves, pricing, those kind of pages are the ones that we would want to be involved in discussions with.
That makes sense. Anybody else have questions?
Shane, is your team then also going to be responsible, as it seems like there's interest of adding different languages website? So I know France bought the FR. Is that your team, or is that going to be somebody else?
Yeah, so it's a combination of growth marketing. So content's really leading the charge on the translation effort, but my team is going to be involved on the setup. Right, we want to be setting those pages up so that they're going to be successful long term. So that's why we want to use the subfolder instead of a subdomain. We want to make sure it has the right tags on there, hreflang tag, so that search engines know what language is appearing on that page without having to kind of do machine learning to try to figure it out on their own. So yeah, making sure that those signals are right, that's absolutely where my team would be involved. I think content, though, is going to be more involved on picking the system, making sure that it's because Erica's leading that project right now. So she's involved in like, what vendor we're going to use and those kind of things. And then my team will come alongside the vendor and make sure that it's all set up so that we're going to be successful long term.
And then ultimately the website team is putting things in place as well. Like you're optimizing, but they're the ones. So it feels like a lot of the team is involved. Yes.
Yeah. So absolutely, because so a lot of the optimization I do are like really like high level, easy things, like adding a button, changing the description, title, those kind of things. But when it comes to creating like build processes, saying like, okay, so this page is in this folder, it gets built with these tags and this stuff, that's definitely gonna be the web team. So the digital team. So yeah, it's gonna be a multi-pronged process. I think content's picking the vendor. They're going to be mainly responsible for that relationship. And then we'll help with the initial kind of speccing out the setup. And then the digital team will actually go in and make sure that the build process matches the spec we need.
And Sarah, I know you've been working really closely with Erica on the due diligence for that vendor. Is that a surprise to you that Shane's group needs to be more involved, or was that kind of a given once? Okay.
No, yeah, I think that's definitely a given, especially with what I've discovered with some of these localization vendors is they have transcreation services and digital marketing services in the localized languages. So it's definitely going to be crucial that we tightly align with the growth marketing team for the SEO aspects of that.
So next question is from Amy. Amy, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, this is kind of out of left field, but I'm wondering if you have a way to find like all the forms that are used on the site. We're kind of going through like a process of getting a better form strategy and maybe using a more global form versus like ones and twos everywhere. So I'm just wondering which ones are active, which ones are not, because if they haven't had a submission in the last like 2 months, that's really all I have to go off of right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way I have found forms in the past is just going in and looking, so I use VS Code locally to, update the website. And so I'll search across the entire project for a specific, form code, and then look for any pages that appears in. And then I did this. So one of the things I did was we needed to add a firing rule to say like, okay, so when this form fires on this page, we want to push on success. We want to push this value to the data layer, right? And that's something that Google Analytics Google Tag Manager uses to push to Google Analytics. And so I went and added that on all the right forms. So like, the trial form, resources forms, those all send the right events now. And I just did I searched for that in the project using VS Code locally, and then made the changes and then pushed them up that way. So even if you're not making changes locally, it's a great way to just look across the website and find where something might occur. Going back to things that my team needs to talk about is definitely any changes to forms, because our tracking with Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics is really dependent on the logic we set up around the forms as they're set up now. So we're going to change it. That's fine. We just need to make sure we got all our ducks in a row to keep our goal conversions tracked.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I might get with you on the side about that one.
Yeah, let's do it. I'd be happy to pair with you on that and show you kind of my process and help you set that up for yourself too.
Sweet.
And Shane, have you heard that it sounds like we're moving away from the idea of using YAML landing pages and using more Marketo landing pages? And I think, Nicole, you told me that there was some question of whether that would affect SEO. It sounds like it's short-lived due to the time that the landing pages are up there, but just comments that you might have or concerns.
Yeah, we should not use Marketo landing pages for anything that is going to be a long-term page for us. They're just not gonna. They're not. Marketo landing pages SEO is fine, right? But they're really designed for a site that has a CMS that then maybe has a subdomain with landing pages, and it's just not how our domain infrastructure set up at all. And so, yeah, as long as the pages are like for events, short-lived things that we don't expect any kind of organic traffic to those pages, it's fine. As far as moving away from YAML, I'm not sure. I think, the big question in the air always is like, will we get a CMS, right? Like if we get a CMS, then I think we wouldn't need Marketo landing pages as much, right? Because then we have a CMS where hopefully we can just go in and drop elements in and we get a landing page. But yeah, no, I don't really know about the plans for YAML, but I do know that we're updating the Marketo pages template. And, my advice has always been like, we can use this for, paid traffic, for things where we know like we're going to get traffic somewhere else. But if we need organic traffic to this page, it doesn't need to be on Marketo pages.
Amy, does that align with your thinking, or have you heard? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about it outside of like our conversation yesterday, really. But that's kind of how I always viewed it too. So I think that's fine.
Cool.
I know it affects the SDR team maybe less. There's, quite a bit of removal, but I don't know if Beth, Nicole, anything that sort of you're thinking, or Jameson from an SDR standpoint of how this would play in or help.
I can't think of anything super directly, but this is always helpful to like just have context, because I think it can be very easy to kind of lose sight of what everybody else is focusing on, and it gives a good full picture.
I would just say that the SDR team appreciates the work because the better conversion, the more leads.
Also that.
Well, do y'all have any other questions for me?
I guess I have a last one. Do you share any of your findings? Like when you go in and analyze the website, I'm just thinking for you, Amy, if there is maybe something that Shane has done that might be useful for a Marketo landing page. You know, I don't know, you changed the color, you created a button that you then saw the increase, just like you said, with the test users, you just did this and that was an immediate effect. You share those best practices or findings.
We haven't to this point. Not because we won't, just because honestly, I don't know that we've had a lot of results where we can point to and say like, this is a best practice for us. You know, we run tests, but a lot of times when we run the test, you know, it's not always clear, you know, like that this is always going to be the best result, you know. I'm just thinking about, you know, any test that we have running now and how we can apply that. I mean, a lot of what I do is just like look at small improvements that we don't really need to test anyway. I'll give you an example. Like I've got an MR out right now for updating the nav, because the nav is something like, you know, we add to, but we don't really manage it all the time. And so I was looking at it last night and just mapping out what's there. Well, we've got install and resources, but we have install as a top level item now. Right. And then the register link still points to a URL that was gitlab.com/sign-in anchor tag sign up or something like that, register. Well, you know, like now we have a sign up URL that's specific to that. And then we had like, you know, stages of the DevOps lifecycle was now where we link to from the product heading, but it's the first entry under that as well. So like little things like that where like, it's clear, like, you know, we can make some changes here that'll improve this and we don't need to test it. And so like, that's kind of the other side of it too, is a lot of times we just move forward with what we know is an improvement instead of trying to test it and determine like, this is absolutely improvement. So I think that's kind of the balance there is, you know, we haven't had a lot of results that we can say are universally useful. And a lot of times when we make changes, it's just a small iterative improvement that we don't really feel like we need to test.
Yeah, the one thought I had along that line is that we actually do this timeline where we track if we make major changes or if we, you know, do any kind of adjustments in marketing ops, we put it in the timeline. If we have to delete a whole bunch of records that shouldn't have gotten in, whatever those case, you know, things are. So if we wanted to see, was there some major changes being done on the website that affected trials or whatever, is that just in issues in your board that we would find closed issues around that time frame? What's the best way to know?
Yeah, I would say issues for now. I mean, so when LJ was here, one of the things I created was a changes of note for Google Tag Manager. So when I made a big update to Google Tag Manager, just went into that. So I think what we can do is, you know, try to add something like that to the inbound marketing handbook. But I think part of the challenge is a lot of times we don't know something's a major change until it's been changed for like a month. And so it's hard to kind of know when something will always, you know, fall into that category. So I would say issue boards are probably the best place to start. I'm trying to get better about creating issues in our project because I tend to, when I was an IC, like before I had a team, like I would just go in and make merge requests and not worry about issues, right? Because why talk about it in an issue where we could just move the merge request forward? So I'm trying to get better about, you know, adding things in issues so that we can be better about tracking our progress and changes and those kind of things. So it'd probably be a mix of issues and merge requests, if I'm honest.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I have one more question that I didn't type on the doc, but maybe someone can add it for me as we're going. With the findings that, you know, after trying to improve conversion and seeing stuff that works, is there maybe a list of things that would be applicable for when we're looking into scoring? Like if we tend to know that, you know, this type of content is getting converted at a higher rate? Should it be scored higher, that kind of stuff? Or is that something that we can start thinking about and trying to analyze?
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. I think so. In Google Analytics itself, there's an event value, and I just set that to like one, right? Like $1. And anytime somebody clicks on like a CTA or completes an event, like that gets counted as $1. So we have basically a percentage in that event value. Like how often does somebody take an action on this page? So that would be a really kind of useful measurement for specific pages. We could also look at like groups of pages and see which pages are performing best. I think there's a mix of data we can pull from Google Analytics, and then also with PMG to see, you know, where they're seeing the ad conversions, and we can use that data together to create something that, you know, would help inform scoring as you move that forward.
All right, Shane, thank you so much for meeting with the team. This was really helpful. I love, you know, really understanding what other teams do, because somehow it's all affected. We all play together. So thank you for your time.
Yeah,
and
I
all
mean,
the information.
we're still figuring out what my team does. So, I mean, no, we, you know, lots of day-to-day stuff we're still active in, but I think, you know, as far as long-term and, you know, exactly, you know, where we'll fit in on that spectrum of things we were talking about, you know, aligning with product growth and where we started the conversation. I think there's a lot of things we'll figure out, but I don't think it'll change the day-to-day things we're focused on and kind of how my team functions. So, yeah, I'm absolutely happy to share what we're working on and how things flow through our team right now. And we'll do this again in 6 months, and we'll see how much of this is still applicable.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you.